Good afternoon. I'll call the House Education Finance Committee to order. We don't yet have a quorum, but Representative Backer, I see you've got your testifiers and that ready, so I think what we'll do is have you go ahead and present your bill, and then I'm going to guess that by the time you get through with the presentations and your testimony, if your testifiers, will have enough people here to formally put your bill before us. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and members. This House file is a bill that's very local. It's a local bill. It focuses on Browns Valley. And just to give you a very brief history, the school district, which I've been a pleasure of serving as school board before I was elected as House of Representative, has been around since 1981 and been servicing South Dakota and Minnesota school students since that time. And pretty much up to 2009, everything worked quite well. With some changes between the agreement between the state of Minnesota and South Dakota in 2009, our four-year-old students did not receive any funding after that, and our testifiers will go through that. So with that said, I will turn it over to our testifiers, and thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you, Representative Backer. Welcome. For each of the testifiers, if you would please just state your full name for the record and before you proceed, and then we look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brenda Reed, Superintendent of Browns Valley Schools. Thank you. And I'm going to just follow with Mr. Backer. The school was established in 1881, and then this started the unique relationship between the state of South Dakota and Browns Valley. West Browns Valley, Minnesota, is located in South Dakota. So that's very unique. Now today, these residents, families, have a South Dakota license with a Minnesota physical address on their license. And until 1994, Browns Valley School District was governed by two districts, Browns Valley, Minnesota 801, and South Dakota School District 54-1. And the South Dakota district was fiscally responsible for education expenses and also maintenance. They also paid their fair share for a new elementary building and a high school building. Later on, this district was dissolved, and we started a tuition agreement with Sisseton, South Dakota, which is only 12 miles away. And at this time with the agreement, four-year-olds were able to be serviced in our school district for special education and also the preschool program. We experienced no problems. And it was from 1994 to 2009. Then in 2009, the South Dakota-Minnesota Reciprocity Agreement was passed. And unfortunately, it was really not in our favor for our four-year-olds. The agreement was only for K through 12. Currently, our four-year-olds in our preschool program cannot receive special ed services. Now, as of today, 49% of our student population are their students from South Dakota. And the preschool program is our feeder program, and we need to address the problem of our four-year-old South Dakota students not receiving special ed services and waiting until they're in kindergarten when they do come to our school. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. My name is Denise Pekarsky. I am the Principal and District Assessment Coordinator for the Browns Valley School, and I'm just going to touch briefly on our academic performance. For the last 2 years, we have been named a reward school by the Minnesota Department of Education. This just means that we ranked among the top 15% of the highest ranking students in the state. This shouldn't be possible with the students that we have. Demographically, we are at 72% free and reduced, and 59% of our students are Native American. But because of the strong start that they receive in the pre-kindergarten program, we're able to produce high-quality students for the state of Minnesota. Basically, what we're asking for is that same opportunity for our families that live on the west side of Lake Traverse, families that live in South Dakota but have a physical Minnesota address, families that are a part of our community, families whose parents, grandparents have gone to our school and choose to send their children there because it is their home. So we're asking for your support in the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Barb Goodhart, and I have been the pre-kindergarten teacher for the Browns Valley School District since 1998. For the past 17 years, I have observed 4-year-olds enter our district low in language and communication, developmentally delayed, and even nonverbal. All Browns Valley pre-kindergarten students with IEPs were serviced by Minnesota until the reciprocity agreement in 2009. We are no longer able to provide those services until the students enter into kindergarten. The first 5 years of a child's life are the most important in development, and yet we are asking children with delayed developments to wait another year, allowing that child to fall even further behind. I am the first person to team up with our families and our children in our community, in our district, first through registration and then through the summer visit. My goal of the summer visit is to begin to build that relationship with each family and their child. As I interact with the children, I began to observe developmental and speech language concerns. The whole time I'm thinking to myself, the only choice that I have to offer the West Browns Valley families are to wait another year until they can begin services when their child enters kindergarten. Browns Valley is their community. It's the community in which they live. It's the community where they buy their groceries and their gas. It's the school that's 1.5 miles from their home. At this time, I truly feel like I'm failing the families and their children. There's nothing worse than a child in need of services, and we are unable to provide them. Our families are confused at this. They're not understanding why we are unable to help. It just doesn't seem educationally ethical to me. The pre-kindergarten program in Browns Valley was started through a federal first grade preparedness grant, where we served as a pilot school for 3 years. We also had a Head Start program in our community that eventually collaborated with the school district. We no longer have the support of either of these programs. We have lost our funding, staff, and additional resources for our families. We are one of the poorest counties in Minnesota, and yet our Head Start program was cut from our county. We stand alone as a district. A major change took place 10 years ago in our district when a colleague and myself decided to invest our time to learn sign language and implement sign language into our daily schedule. We now do sign language throughout our daily routine. We see sign language as a best practice in our district. Sign language not only provides our students with success in communication, but being able to participate as well. Our students enter our district in the fall with data demonstrating that we are 15 to 20% below the state average. In the spring, our data demonstrates that we are ending above the state average. Our data for our Native American students demonstrates that 0% are on target for kindergarten when they enter in the fall. And in the spring, our data demonstrates that 60 to 100% of them are on target for kindergarten. So we know what we're doing in our district is working. When our first class of pre-kindergarten entered into 3rd grade, I remember as if it were yesterday. The 3rd grade teacher came into my classroom to celebrate the fact that all of her students were readers. For the first time, our district did not have a non-reader in 3rd grade. That still stands true today. I can name the nonverbal children that have come into our district. And as I follow them through the grades and watch as they progress, I see that some of them are at grade level. Some of them are slightly below grade level. And many of them are significantly below grade level. And I have to wonder, where would those students be if they wouldn't have lost a year of special services? Last Friday, I had the opportunity to observe Josephine, a past student of mine. She was in the hallway having a conversation with our custodian. And as I walked by, I noticed a smile on her face. She was enjoying that interaction. The cool part to this story is 3 years ago, when she entered into the pre-kindergarten program, She was nonverbal, so nonverbal that she was unable to state her name. And that's when the first modification took place. She is still known today, as many of our staff and students, as JoJo. Our families are choosing our district as their school family. Our school is in their community, but yet we cannot meet their needs. We are not only setting the foundation for their education, but for their life. Let's not fail them. Let's not turn our families away. In closing, we have a 1-minute video that's going to demonstrate some of which you have heard today.
What's the weather? What's the weather? Can Sparrow tell? Can Sparrow tell? Is the sun shining? Is the rain falling? Can Sparrow tell? Can Sparrow tell?
Volcano cards, candle. Garden table for your breath. Is it a pig? Pig. What is it? Is it a hat? Is it a hen? What is it?
This last clip is a morning meeting message written by the pre-kindergarten students inviting the commissioner to please come for a visit. Their greet is in Petuwashte, Dakota, for good day. Today is Wednesday. Ellie is the star of the day. Please come for a visit, signed by the little T-Birds. I'm asking you to please support House File 1259. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Representative Backer, we have quorum, so I'm going to formally move your bill that House File 1259 be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, but it is my intention to lay it over today for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. And thank you all for your testimony. Representative Detmer, I had you down as having a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe just for information, is this an isolated case with South Dakota, or are we having similar cases with North Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, or the other border states? Thank you for bringing this bill forward.
No, not that I'm aware of. That's why when we did the bill there, Representative, we were very narrow focused with the Minnesota residents that live in South Dakota, because this is West Browns Valley, like our superintendent has shared. They have a Minnesota driver's license, so it is very limited, and we did not find other scenarios through the border with South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, unless we overlooked something, but we did not find any representative.
Representative Detmer.
Oh, that answers my question. Thank you.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it's obvious the school is doing an excellent job out there, and thank you for coming today and sharing with us what you're doing. And Representative Backer, this bill needs to get done, and thank you for bringing it, and I support your bill today, and we need to get this moving, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And just one quick thing, Madam Chair and the members. One of the key things with our school district is, as we heard from the testifiers, they start nonverbals, and our demographic shows that we should not be a reward school. And our staff and teachers work really hard. Now, on a side note, Brenda, Miss Reed, was my special education student when she came. How many years ago, Brenda?
Well, it's quite a while.
Yeah, quite a while. She just turned 19, so.
Actually, my birthday's Friday, so no.
But yeah, she was my teacher.
78.
Representative Mullery.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you'll indulge a question, not directly on it. It was triggered. I really wondered. You mentioned Sisseton as being real close. When my mom taught there, she taught with a Minnesota license, no South Dakota license. Is that still true?
Who wants to take that one?
As far as we have to meet Minnesota licensure. All teachers do.
Now, do your example, Barb. You live actually.
Oh,
you're
yeah, I
like-
actually live in South Dakota, but my driver's license is Browns Valley, Minnesota,
Yeah.
on my driver's license.
Madam
But
Chair,
you have Minnesota teacher's license.
And I have a Minnesota teaching license, that's what you're asking. Yeah, I have a Minnesota teaching license.
Madam Chair, I was just
Representative
trying to
Muller.
figure out if they are like us, that you have to have a teacher's license in Minnesota. Does South Dakota
Oh,
still recognize Minnesota teacher's license without a South Dakota one?
no, they would have to have South Dakota. They would need a South Dakota license to teach in South Dakota. Yeah.
Very well. Other questions? Representative Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the testifiers, did this problem arise because you lost or because the federal grant expired? Or have you had this as an ongoing program or need, and have you been before us before? And I may have missed that because I came in late.
You can answer.
Ms. Reed?
Madam Chair and representatives, the problem occurred with the special education of the 4-year-olds in 2009, when the reciprocity
Yes.
agreement started
Okay.
in 2009. Prior to that, there was no problems.
Oh, I see, okay.
And Madam Chair, Representative, the Browns Valley School District has never came in front of this committee or any bill. This is the first bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Erickson. So I'm still trying to understand how all of this transpired. So Representative Backer or Ms. Reed or even Mr. Strom, was it just kind of informal agreements between South Dakota and Minnesota that allowed this to go forward for the number of years, and then when something formal was done,
The first
things fell through the cracks?
Madam Chairman and Representatives, the first formal agreement between this, it was first, I'll take it back, it was, South Dakota was District 4, then it changed to District 103, and then to District 54-1. And what happened in 1961, when the country schools were starting to close in South Dakota, Browns Valley was the closest school for many of them, like the West Browns Valley, Minnesota. And so in 1961 was the first formal agreement with the South Dakota district in our school district. And from then on, it just kept going, and we've had a tuition agreement. And they paid for the number of kids that came over to Minnesota, and we paid for our high school. Because we are a pre-K through grade 8.
Thank you. Mr. Strom, do you know, this sounds fairly unusual.
Madam Chair, I think a couple of issues are worth highlighting here. As the superintendent says, prior to the statewide tuition reciprocity agreement, individual districts along the border could enter into an agreement, a tuition agreement with a neighboring district. And I'm not, the superintendent has spoken to the specifics of theirs, but essentially what happened is when the state, the state was given authority to enter into a uniform tuition agreement with South Dakota districts, and the Commissioner of Education negotiated that agreement, and that agreement calls for coverage of activities from kindergarten through enrollment, from kindergarten on, and so it doesn't cover the pre-kindergarten activities. In terms of the funding, the way the funding works under tuition reciprocity is South Dakota pays the South Dakota rate for their students, Minnesota pays the Minnesota rate for theirs, and then there's a settling at the end of the year. And so it's a single uniform settling. There are a number of districts along the South Dakota border for whom the tuition agreements work fairly well. There are a few districts for whom the uniform tuition agreement does not work well. Browns Valley is one example. There are a couple others. I think you'll hear from another district, Hendricks, later this week. The issue, there are other issues related to early education that perhaps the Browns Valley folks can talk about, but issues related to who in South Dakota is responsible for those services. But as of right now, without this legislation, the uniform tuition agreement covers, and that covers only beginning in kindergarten.
Thank you. That's helpful because it's not abundantly clear right off the bat why this occurred. So, other questions? All right. Is there anyone else from the general public who would wish to testify on this bill? All right. Seeing none, Representative Backer, do you want to make any final comments?
Madam Chair and Representatives, I would ask for your support. As you can see, we are a small school district with limited resources, and we're producing students from with special needs, and they're excelling. And that's really what we want to do here in this committee and as elected officials, is put the best students forward, and Browns Valley is doing that. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you to your testifiers for being here today. And with that, I will renew my motion that House File 1259 be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, but I am laying it over today for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let's see, Representative Kresha, it's going to be your turn up. And while you're moving to the testifier table, I will move the minutes of March 12th. And I want to thank our Vice Chair for taking care of committee that day. I wrenched my back, and it was a humbling and painful experience, but I knew that you all would be in good hands, and I'm doing better and actually upright in a chair today. Things are good. So with that, would Representative Fenton, you want to move the minutes for March 12th?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. All right. And Representative Kresha, I think what we'll do is I'll move their first bill, which is just the appropriation, and set that over, and then move your second bill, House File 1220, and then testifiers can refer to both bills, if that's all right with you. Or actually, why don't you, if you want to go ahead and move House File 603 to be referred to Ways and Means.
I will, Madam Chair. I'll move House File 603 to be referred to Ways and Means, and with the possible inclusion, or just
yes.
to Ways and Means?
Just to Ways and Means, and it's my intention to lay it over.
Okay. So I'll move House File 603 to Ways and Means.
All right, very well, and so I will now lay that over, and then Representative Kresha, if you want to move your next bill, House File 1220.
Madam Chair, I will move House File 1220 to be re-referred to Ways and Means.
Correct? All right, and so with that, please go ahead and present your bill, Representative Kresha.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And I should note, Madam Chair, in your absence, the committee was well-behaved. You run a great committee.
Madam Chair, he should confess to you, though, that he was referred to as Madam Chair.
Many times. Many times.
With pride, Representative Kresha.
Absolutely.
All right.
Badge of honor. Thank you, Madam Chair. So now I'm off my game. So House File 1220, and I'm going to grab it out of my other packet. I thought I had it in front of this, but this is the Scholarships Policy Committee, or Policy Bill. And what I'm trying to do here, and the reason I was hesitating just a little bit, is I had an amendment that I did not offer for this bill, but that I wanted to talk about. And I may have left it on my desk over there, but I'll go through it briefly because I have some ideas. So House File 1220, and no surprises here, I'm trying to make this a pure Pathway 1 policy bill. That the intentions of the early scholarships is to reach our disadvantaged youth and to put that money into the hands of those families with portability and flexibility, and to do it in a pure manner. Pathway 2, while I understand some of the compromises that were there, Pathway 2 took some of those dollars and put those into school-based programs. Not that it was a bad idea, but it took away from what the intentions of Pathway 1 were. So I've been working with many groups, having many conversations, trying to solve this problem, which is to get the Pathway 1 dollars to those families and not to dilute that. And in doing that, I have an amendment, and I'll offer, or it's actually not an amendment, it's ready, it's a draft, but I'll ask the committee's indulgence on some ideas. What we're looking at doing, and the proposal that I have is, and what I've heard is that we have school readiness, we have early childhood family education dollars. which are designed to do exactly what we're trying to do with the scholarships, except in a limited fashion. And what the idea is, if we could give the flexibility of our schools, and I'm thinking primarily of the rural schools, and I'd love to hear from the metro legislators as well, but to give that flexibility out in the schools, that they could move the early childhood dollars between those two accounts, between the school readiness and the family education, and craft their own school-based programs that fit the needs of their students. And the only way that I believe that also works is if we tie that to the formula funding. So the idea is to give an increase, to allow that to be tied to the formula, to allow Pathway 1 dollars to flow purely through the Pathway 1 formula, and allow schools then to operate with their early childhood and school readiness to craft their programs. I believe that offers a lot of the flexibility that we're looking for, that also gives us some of the programs choices that we don't have in the rural areas. And of course, this would also be predicated on the fact that we have to make sure we handle the CCAP and the Head Start funding as well. So those are the ideas behind the scholarship program. The policy you'll see in front of you here also, we begin to move towards removing the cap. We do a sliding scale. I would personally like to get rid of the cap altogether because I think that is causing problems, but I do realize there are political realities to that. But in here, we do allow that the commissioner may increase up to 15% the scholarship amount for children who are enrolled in the 3 and the 4 parent aware programs. So with that, I think that covers most of what we are trying to accomplish. And again, the language in that amendment, I don't have it in front of you here because I really wanted to get the committee's opinion on that. I wanted to see if there was some value in allowing our schools to have some more flexibility in moving those dollars between ECFE and school readiness, tying that to the funding formula, and then perhaps adding that later as we move this bill forward. And with that, I'll happily stand for testifiers or questions, Madam Chair.
All right, any questions right now for Representative Kresha, or perhaps we should go to testifiers, and then I'm sure we'll come back to questions. So if there's those people who wish to testify on House File 1220, if you want to move to the testifier table. Representative Newton.
Madam Chair, while they're coming up, I'd like to ask Representative Kresha if you have any idea of the cost, of what this might cost?
Representative Kresha.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Of the scholarship or the Pathway 1 scholarship bill that I have in front of you, or the ECFE and school readiness portion?
Madam Chair, Representative Kresha, the early learning scholarships.
Representative Kresha.
There's been a number of costs that have been thrown out there. I believe we have 23 and 23 in the base rate now. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Strum or Ms. Johnson. But the total number has been anywhere from 250 to 300. I think if we can get into the 100 million range, that's a great place to go. Ideally, I'd love to win the lottery on this and do it all at the 300, but I'm trying to work with reality. So I think we have at least a range of at least a 75 to 300 million, somewhere in there, wherever I can hit the target correctly. But I do have a bill coming up after this that will help us on the other side of this if we don't get all the funding here.
All right. Thank you. So do you want to go ahead? Do you have specific testifiers, or I'll just call on them to introduce
Yes.
themselves?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, very good. Well, welcome. We appreciate you coming to the committee today. If you please just state your name for the record, and then please provide your testimony.
Madam Chair, Frank Forsberg, and I work with Greater Twin Cities United Way as a Senior Vice President, and I also have the privilege of serving as the Chair for the statewide Mini Minds Coalition. And I think we distributed the list of the members around, and just wanted to recognize that this statewide coalition has more than 100 members today. It's a very diverse coalition, and I think it's a great testament to the interest from across the state for early childhood education, and in particular for the role that scholarships can play in helping to close that kindergarten readiness gap. I have 4 quick points that I'd like to make about the bill. First of all, it does offer to lift the cap that is currently in place, and we want to support the lifting of the cap in any way that that can happen. We're very pleased with what we're learning from the 4 Race to the Top transformation zones in the state of Minnesota, and those have very flexible caps, very easy for those communities to work with, and it allows those communities to serve and meet the needs of each unique individual child. So lifting the cap, I think, has a great track record, and I think we already have 4 good pilots that we can learn from. Second, tiered reimbursement. Just a little modification on what's in the bill. We like tiered reimbursement as a way to encourage providers to become parent-aware rated and to reward those who are 3- and 4-star, who are of the highest quality with a higher level of reimbursement. We think that's how we can change the system at scale, and using that tiered reimbursement sends, I think, a terrific and powerful message to the entire provider community. So we support that kind of reimbursement approach. Number 3, Pathway 2 was mentioned in the opening remarks, and it's been struck from this bill. We want to make sure we share with you that we have worked collaboratively over the last 2 years with schools, Head Starts, the Department of Education, to really work on making Pathway 2 effective. We want scholarships to work well for schools and for Head Starts. In working on that and making continued improvements in future years, we think would be the best option so that schools and Head Starts across the state can smartly plan for and provide the services they're well qualified to provide using scholarships effectively. And then finally, at the end of the bill, cost. We know this is a tough issue, and the representative just talked about that. Mini Minds, when it built its initial business model with the help of the Federal Reserve 2.5 years ago, identified that there are about 20,000 low-income children in the state of Minnesota, 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds, who are on a wait list of some kind or are underserved. Our estimate is that that would cost about $300 million for the biennium, on average about $7 million, or $7,000, excuse me, per scholarship. And so we just wanted to make sure we shared with you kind of what is the scope of the need as we understand it and what would be required to close that gap. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Forsberg. And
Good afternoon. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Barbara Milan. I am the Executive Director at Phyllis Wheatley Community Center. Very pleased to be here this afternoon at Phyllis Wheatley Community Center. We have the oldest continuously operating child development center, Mary T. Welcome, in the state of Minnesota. Phyllis Wheatley is now in its 90th year. We want to urge you to support early child development. We know from our children who are in our program, children who have graduated, adults, children who became adults who are gainfully employed, that when we invest in our children, we are doing the right thing for children, for families, for our community, and for the state of Minnesota. Recently, we have had families to come in who were participants in our program. So we know that there is an intergenerational effect when we invest in our children. We are part, Phyllis Wheatley Community Center is part of the MAC Commonwealth Network of Early Child Providers, and 2 of those organizations and another colleague, between the 3 of us, we have 252 years of serving the community. And each of those organizations, the Family Partnership and Way to Grow, are rated 4-star. And so we want you to know that it's very important that we support our children now so that we have a future in tomorrow, for tomorrow. So thank you for your consideration. We appreciate your support. Just one other thing, based upon the research, we have the Periscope research. We have the wonderful research by Art Rolnick and also Rob Grunwald from our own Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. That affirms that when we invest in our children longer term, we are contributing. When they become adults, they are gainfully employed, they graduate from school, we reduce rates of crime, and we have active, involved citizens in our community. So we want you to support early child development scholarships. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Lynn Barton. I'm a family child care provider from Alexandria. And for the last 17 years, I've provided early education from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday in my living room, in my backyard, around my kitchen table. It happens through play, and it happens where I meet each individual child's needs where they're at. Parents choose me to spend countless hours with them, with their children, working on the skills that they need to succeed. The parents choose me because they want a provider that is always there. They want their siblings to play and learn in the same room. They value my approach for caring for their children. They value the traditions that I bring to their children. I'm proud to have earned a 4-star Parent Aware rating, and I continue to support and encourage other fellow providers through mentorship and training to participate in Parent Aware. And as an early childhood provider and a small business owner, my family child care program is very important to me and to the community. I'm a critical part of the group of individuals and organizations that are responsible for helping prepare our children for school and for life and success. I enable the parents to go to work each day without worry, so they can earn a living and support their growing children. I'm here today to ask you to support the increased investment in the Early Learning Scholarships. Minnesota needs an all-hands-on-deck approach to achieve the school readiness goals. And family child care providers are ready and eager to participate in the success of our children. Scholarships offer one very important pre-K funding stream and honors the role that home-based family child care providers play in our local communities. I urge the committee support the importance of the Minnesota early education system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Nancy Jost, and I work for West Central Initiative out of Fergus Falls. It's a community foundation. I have been in early childhood for 42 years, so I have worked in most of the early childhood settings that scholarships go to. Today I wanted just to bring the parents' voice, because we've heard from providers and mini minds, and I thought we should also hear from families and parents. The first story I wanted to read to you is about a mom. And she writes, "The Early Learning Scholarship has been very helpful to me. A year ago, I was caught up in a cycle of abuse that was becoming harder and harder to break away from. I knew securing a job was the only way I could leave my abuser and become a financially independent single mom. Although my boys are in school, I needed childcare for my youngest daughter to be able to commit to a job. Affordable childcare was the way to make this happen. Finding a childcare program with a good learning environment for my daughter was very important to me. Because we received a state scholarship, my daughter was able to attend Head Start. Her program has been everything I could have hoped for and more. Her teacher is like her second mom, who gives her the support, quality care, and education she deserves while I work to support our family, for which I am so grateful. I wouldn't have been able to achieve what I have in the past year without the scholarship and Head Start. With access to early learning scholarships, child care for my daughter has given me the opportunity to move forward in my life while knowing she is safe and being readied for kindergarten. Now that I'm working, I'm on the road to ending the cycle of abuse. No longer is this something my children have to live with and witness. Getting the negative influences out of my life this past year has been a work in progress, but it gets better every day. I can now be an example for my kids and show them that we can have a better life." I'd also just like to read some comments that were made from parents on the White Earth Reservation. One mom says, "I recently graduated from the White Earth Tribal and Community College in May of 2014. with an early childhood education degree, and I know that wouldn't have been possible without the scholarship. Because of the White Earth Scholarship Program, and this is another mom, I have been able to adopt 2 children, siblings, who have both been exposed to drugs and alcohol. I've worked full-time, and both children have scholarships to pay for their childcare. One of the reasons that I decided to bring the parent perspective is because sometimes I think we think of scholarships as only benefiting the children, but it really is benefiting the whole family. And when we benefit the whole family, we benefit our communities and our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jost.
Madam Chair, members, my name's Jim Bartholomew with the Minnesota Business Partnership, and we'd like to thank Representative Kresha for authoring this bill, and would like to briefly highlight a couple reasons why we support House File 1220. First, as Representative Kresha mentioned, it clarifies that parent-aware scholarships are portable. In other words, families will continue to have access to their scholarship funds when, either by choice or circumstance, they transfer their child from one eligible provider to another. Currently, this option isn't always available under Pathway 2. Second, we think 2020 is a more reasonable timeframe than 2016, which is current law, for requiring all parent-aware providers to either be a 3- or 4-star program. One new issue we'd like to put out there for consideration as this goes along is allowing families to use their scholarship at more than one provider. For example, they may use a school-based program in the morning and another parent-aware provider in the afternoon. Under current law, this flexibility isn't allowed. And finally, we'd ask that as you put together your budget, that you include additional funding to help expand the number of low-income families that have access to effective early ed services through parent-aware scholarships. And just as a last point, we'd like to emphasize that the scholarships can be used at a wide variety of providers, whether they're school-based, Head Start, center-based, or family-based providers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Murphy.
Question for Mr. Bartholomew. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Mr. Bartholomew, if we divided the scholarships, would we be hurting some of the providers by, you use the example of one provider in the morning and a different provider in the afternoon. And so if you didn't offer both providing or both services, then would you as a provider be hurt
Mr. Bartholomew.
financially?
Madam Chair, Representative Murphy, as we understand it, if a parent is doing that arrangement currently, they use one in the morning, one in the afternoon, they'd only be able to use a portion of their scholarship for the morning or for the morning provider. They wouldn't be able to access, so they theoretically wouldn't be using all the available scholarship funds that they have. So we're kind of leaving on the table for the family additional scholarship funds that they could otherwise use in the afternoon, which maybe is a long way of saying, it's our understanding you would not be shortchanging the morning provider to also provide funding for the afternoon provider. It's just making better use of the funds that are available.
Representative Murphy.
But Madam Chair, the previous testifier Ms. No, Ms. Barden, I think it was.
Barton?
Testified that you said you're there in the morning, you're there in the afternoon. If the child didn't come in the afternoon, then would you lose that income then from the scholarship from the student in the morning?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Barton.
Representative Murphy, that is a difficult question to answer due to the grounds that every child care provider sets up their funding a little bit differently. Some providers charge hourly, some charge half day, some charge full day, some charge weekly. So it really depends on the provider. My experience and conversation shows that a lot of times in this kind of scenario, that a lot of that funding goes unused because it's used in one source and then it can't, the rest of that money doesn't carry over to the next provider, whether it's a school or a center or family child care provider.
Okay. Madam Chair, and then just one more question, Ms. Barden, then. Tell me again the time that you're there to serve the students that come to you.
My hours are 7 in the morning to 5:30 in the evening.
That's what I thought you said.
And Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair,
Representative
Mr. Bartholomew again. Then, do you think that this, if we were able to split the scholarship, then we would be able to provide a fairness for all the providers?
Mr. Bartholomew.
Madam Chair, Representative Murphy, I think so. That would be the intent, while also providing the added flexibility for the parents.
Representative Murphy.
Madam Chair, Representative Kresha, what do you think about dividing the scholarship?
Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Murphy, actually, that was an amendment that I had drafted that we didn't make deadline. I actually think it's a really good idea, and here's the reason. The focus of this program is on the families and directing the dollars to those families to choose for those children. While the providers do an absolute wonderful job, from what I've heard, many of them are full. I believe you're full. And so I understand the consideration of wanting to look out for them and their revenue and how well they do, but I think that program will be taken care of by the sheer volume and demand for these programs and these dollars flowing in. So I actually support breaking up the scholarships and allowing the flexibility. In a lot of ways, I guess the simplest analogy is that we treat this like cash, that they're providing, they're using this as a way to choose their education and their preschool programs, and if they can break it up because they have to, because of work schedules and things that happen, it's a great way for them to manage the supplementary education of their children in preschool, if that makes any sense. So I'm really trying to do the flexibility for my idea is flexibility, portability to these families. Let them direct those funds in a way that helps them maximize their life and how they can educate their preschoolers.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I have Representative Marquardt Newton on the list, but I think we have additional testifiers. Do you want to ask questions now, or?
I do have one for Mr.
Okay, all right, so I think we'll go with the two of you, and then if there's additional people that wish to testify, come on down. Representative Mallory, I have you on the list. Representative Marquardt.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I guess this is for also Mr. Bartholomew. And Representative Kresha, subdivision 4, that part that delays until 2020, that you have to be a 3 or 4-star rating quality. I mean, you know, this started probably about 2012, so that's going to, you know, we're almost going to be 8 years down the line before we're requiring 3 and 4-star. And, you know, one of the strengths of this program is the quality and the fact there's a parent-aware system. And what is kind of perplexing for me is here, we're now going to say you don't have to be a 3 or 4-star, when in fact, if you went to a Head Start or school-based, we know that's 3 or 4-star. So, Mr. Bartholomew and Representative Kresha, aren't we really lessening the quality of this program by saying we're going to go another 4 years and not require 3 and 4 years? I mean, I don't know where the flexibility is. I think the market should drive the system here. And if daycare providers know they have, I mean, this program started probably about 2012. That's going to give them 8 years. I just think that's a real hit on the quality. And I just would like to maybe know the rationale for that. And for Mr. Bartholomew, isn't this reducing quality of the program and the scholarships?
Representative Kresha, do you want to take that first?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Marquardt. I share those same frustrations, and in fact, I think my hesitation on this is absolutely we want the quality right away, we want it tomorrow. We want to make sure that that's there, but the reality for 30-some counties is they just haven't been able to get there yet. As much as we've tried, whether it's lack of funding or lack of education or lack of accessibility to these programs, we haven't got it in a way that I believe this is ubiquitous throughout the entire state. So that's why this is my compromise language, to try to help those 30-some counties that haven't quite got there yet. We have 50-some that I believe are there, and I can get you the exact counties, but I want to try to help them be part of this program as well. And quite frankly, a lot of those are the rural areas that I represent. My county in Morrison County has come on just lately, and they've been moving right along. Todd County has struggled a little bit to get in it. So that's what I'm trying to do. Is it a perfect solution? No. Is it the quality that I absolutely would love to see? No. But is it a way to keep us moving in the right direction that I think has momentum? Yes. So that's what I would offer up. And I believe Erica Moss, if she's here, she also has some information on this as well. But I couldn't agree with you more, but I can't take the hardline approach to say, if we just make a hard line, because who are we leaving out? And I'm not trying to leave out anybody. And Mr. Bartholomew or Ms. Moss, if you want to help me out with this.
Sure.
Hi, could you state your name for the record?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Erica Moss from Parent Aware for School Readiness, a nonprofit, independent nonprofit supporting the expansion of the Parent Aware ratings. So to piggyback on what Representative Kresha said, there are actually about 40 counties in the state of Minnesota where ratings have only become available for the very first time, January 1st of 2015. So while, as Representative Marquardt points out, the statewide expansion of the rating started in 2012, it was a staged rollout where some counties started in 12, some in 13, some in 14, and then finally statewide in 2015. So there are many counties in the state where child care providers are only now having their very first opportunity to enter the rating system. And what we see over time in areas where ratings have been, for example, since 2012, is increasing numbers of providers coming into the system and increasing numbers of providers moving up to 4 stars. We just actually haven't released this data publicly yet, but we do. One of the things that our organization does is from 2012 to 2015, we're investing about $1 million in evaluation of Parent Aware. And what we've seen with the most recent evaluation findings is that providers that came in, maybe in 2012, at a 1 or a 2-star level, that many of them get re-rated at a higher level, at a 3 or 4-star level. So we do feel great about the fact that providers are increasingly adopting the rating system, that they're taking advantage of what the system offers to improve their quality. But it does take time, and in particular, the expectation that providers in these 40 counties where ratings have only been available for 3 months, it's unrealistic to expect that they will come in and move up that quickly. There's even just awareness of the opportunity and the availability of the opportunity, plus having to go through the rating process and participate in the program does take time.
And Madam Chair, if I could just, go ahead.
Well,
I was just my last comment.
Just one quick comment in that. I mean, I think then the solution is to keep the pathway 2 until you get all of these counties capable of having the 3 and 4 star. I don't think we should be compromising quality at this point just because we're not ready in a certain pathway 1. Then let's keep the pathway 2 open until 2020, when then you have everyone 4 star. I mean, I don't think we should throw out one idea just to sit here, because I think it is going to impact the quality until a certain point.
Representative Kresha.
And Madam Chair, and Representative Marquardt, actually, I couldn't agree with you more. And I realize that's a compromise position we may have to get to. And as I stated earlier in my testimony, I'm really looking for the feedback of the committee, and you're helping with that. Perhaps there's a place in this where we do a grandfathered section, or we do something to help mitigate that. And again, I'm also trying to do it with the early childhood and the school readiness. But what we don't want to do is leave kids behind. And I think you've recognized a possible void.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Newton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not quite sure whether this should be for Mr. Bartholomew or Representative Kresha, but the parents get the voucher for the children to go to the daycare or the school. What happens if the child is in school in the morning and it goes to daycare in the afternoon. Does that, in splitting the voucher, is it, none of it would go to the daycare if the child had been in school during the day and is only going to the daycare for the daycare portion of it? Or, I don't quite know how this would work. And the second question I have is, will the school districts also get this amount? Will they receive the same full amount if they take 4-year-olds into the program? Thank you.
Representative Kresha.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Newton. So the scholarship is designed to go to an early learning quality program. There has been some discussion of possibly breaking this up to allow it to flow in, like perhaps a CCAP as well, because I can see a case where you might have 4 hours of an early learning program and have childcare later that you might have to break this up. And we've had those discussions. I actually think that's a worthy conversation to have as well, so I'm glad you brought that up. The second part of your question, I wanted to make sure, the schools. As I understand it, a school can absolutely accept a child through a scholarship, and they would be then taking the costs of that child and not the entire scholarship. So if they can do it for a certain rate that's higher or lower, we can make those adjustments. Obviously, if it's higher than the cap, then we have the cap problem. So my understanding, or my intention would be, it doesn't matter what they choose. If you choose a school-based program, if you choose a child care center or a preschool center, that's up to you, and we're just trying to provide the scholarship to make sure you can fund that tuition. There's costs no matter what, whether it's a school-based program or a child care. It's just, can we cover those and give the parents flexibility? Thank you. But thank you.
Thank you. Representative Muller, or excuse me, actually Representative Anderson, you're next.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I had a question for Ms. Barden, the lady from Alexandria, if she could step down again. And a concern I think a lot of us have that are from outstate is that these programs and scholarships, as Representative Kresha is talking about, are available statewide. And I would just like to ask if she knows, you mentioned you're from Alexandria, to your knowledge, how many folks out in that general area have already qualified or been rated in the parent-aware system? Can you give us any kind of a ballpark number?
Ms. Barton.
Madam Chair, Representative Anderson, I would have to say Erica Moss would be probably a better, she's the numbers person, and she's probably looking for those right now. I can tell you in Douglas County, I believe there are 4-star rated providers, family child care providers. And I could not tell you how many 3-star. But I know there are several, going through the process right now. When you start the process, it takes time to, put all the training together and the paperwork and to achieve your rating.
Representative Anderson.
Thanks again, Madam Chair. And if we're looking for the numbers, I'll ask one more then. Quickly, could you describe the process of becoming rated in terms of the time commitment that it took for you, and how would you describe the entire process of being rated in the parent-aware system?
Ms. Barton.
Madam Chair, Representative Anderson, I have been watching and knew that the parent-aware, when it was going to be available in my county, so I was ahead of the ball game. I knew that I had to get certain trainings, and I had actually I had received my CDA, and so I had taken a lot of the classes previous to when Parent Aware was going to be available in the county, so it didn't take me quite as long. When I go out and teach my trainings, mandatory trainings to family child care providers, I always talk about Parent Aware and how they should be participating in Parent Aware and how it's a really, a great program, a chance to better yourself. But more importantly is the fact that a lot of the providers are going to have self-awareness that they're already doing the right things, which is kind of a self-awareness that you are on the right step. But providers across the board are scared sometimes of having somebody come into their home and telling them what to do. Or sometimes it's just it kind of depends on where you're coming from, where you're starting, how many different trainings you have to take, and what star you're going to go for. A 1-star is one 2-hour class over the minimum licensing requirements. So it's very easy to attain once they decide that they're going to participate. I found that providers don't necessarily like going for a 1-star because they're overachievers or they don't think a 1-star looks very good, so they want to wait before entering on the program until they have more of the training behind them so they can start in at a 2 or a 3-star. So providers are, they have very different opinions and processes of how they go about obtaining their rating.
Right, and Ms. Moss, have you located the numbers?
Madam Chair, Erica Moss from Parent Aware for School Readiness. I have are percentage participation by county for licensed providers. And in Douglas County, there is 11% participation currently. That county, I believe, was it 2014? Came online with ratings. Ratings became available in 2014 in Douglas County. If you look at counties that have had a lot of scholarships and where ratings became available in 2012, for example, Itasca County, 40% of licensed providers are participating. Clearwater and Monoman counties, Clearwater 35%, Monoman 25%. So what we see in the data is what I was describing earlier. Counties come online. It takes a while to build awareness among providers. It takes a while for providers to move through the process. The longer ratings are available and the more incentives there are, the more providers participate. In an area, for example, like the northeastern part of the state, you have some other counties that have tipped over 30% participation because of local efforts and incentives that are available. But again, the examples I think that are especially relevant to the conversation the committee is having today, Itasca County, where they have Race to the Top scholarships, a good number of scholarships, uncapped scholarships, a lot of availability, and the areas around the White Earth Reservation. Again, White Earth Reservation has some of those Race to the Top scholarships, a high number of scholarships, uncapped scholarships. You see fairly high participation rates of providers, and it's going well in those areas, and over time across the state, we expect rates to continue to rise.
And could you provide that list by county for the committee? That would be helpful. Thank you. All right, so Representative Mullery, next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Several things on this. First of all, Representative Kresha, I understand where Representative Marquardt is coming from, but I also understand that I partly agree with him and partly don't agree with him, because it's not just rural, it's there's a lot of communities of color that want to go to a certain person that their family is connected to or something, especially more new immigrants, but not just them. And while I understand that maybe the fastest growing numbers of people getting the certification are in communities of color, they're still way down, and we need a lot more. So I think that maybe tweaking this a little more as you go on might be a good thing. I did, I'm wondering exactly, what did you say? You said you're going to increase the cap from 5,000 by 15 or 20%? Is that what you were saying? It sounded like that to me.
Representative
Madam
Kresha.
Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Mullery. So in the bill, if you are a 3 or 4 started, I want to make sure I have it, 3 or 4 star rated program, we're going to increase the percentage of the scholarship for those children by 15% if you go up to a 3-star, 20% if you're up to a 4-star. So the encouragement is 2 things: trying to lift that cap a little bit, but also trying to lift those caps for, and give an incentive to programs that get those higher ratings.
Madam Chair,
Representative Mullery.
I'm concerned that from what I'm hearing, there's quite a few families that an increase of $1,000 even, which would be the maximum that you would raise, is not going to make it for a lot of really at-risk kids in the inner city. So I hope as you go along, maybe you can push that some more. The reality is that's just not going to do enough, even when they, and I know the scholarships can be paired with some other money, but it still isn't going to be enough. One other thing that there was reference to Art Rolnick but it needs to be pointed out. Everybody keeps quoting them, and in fact, I just checked with them in the last week, both Art Rolnick and Art Reynolds, who did the Chicago longitudinal study. I know both of them, and those are the results that people claim from them, 7-to-1, are only when that only applies to really very at-risk kids, and only with more than just the scholarship. It involves involvement with the parents and different things like that. So hopefully you can wrap this together a little more. And then I wasn't sure what you mentioned, doing something with CCAP, and that's when you're talking about raising money. I've got bills in to try and get CCAP into reality, which it's not, but you're apparently working with them, so maybe interplay between that. Right now, in many people in my neighborhood, if you're facing $8,000 to $10,000 for a decent program, right now CCAP, unless you're get the extra 15 or 20%, gives you $2,000. Well, a lot of parents can't afford the $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. So I hope you'll work on that and let me know how you're going on that. And then just as one final question of Ms. Myland, I thought she said that between her and 2 other people, they had a total of 252 years working in childcare, and I was wondering if that was right.
You look marvelous, Miss Mylan, by the way.
Maybe I should make vitamins. That'll help support Phyllis Wheatley Community Center. No, but Representative Mullery, I was referring to the age of 3 organizations, which includes Phyllis Wheatley Community Center, the Family Partnership, and Way to Grow. Combined, we have 252 years of service to our community and families.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair.
Representative Kresha.
Thank you. And if I could respond to Representative Mullery, let me tell you what my intentions are and what they aren't. And you're absolutely right about Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Rolnick. In fact, I've been talking to Mr. Rolnick as well, and he was going to Skype in for the meeting, but we haven't been able to actually. I was going to actually have him here. I said, we use your name all the time. Let's put you here. But he hasn't come back till April 15th. But I will be very, very clear with you on who I'm trying to reach. And Representative Mullery, you and I have been on the Child Protection Task Force. There are children that when they receive a knock on the door from Child Protection Services are woefully the most disadvantaged. When they receive that knock on the door, whether it's an allegation or something that's happening, poverty, chronic depression, chronic inebriation that happens in the parents, those set those children back immensely. Those are the children I'm trying to reach. And I'll be very clear about that. While I also appreciate Representative Marquardt's and and we try to make accommodations with programs, but the fact of the matter, when those children are getting a knock on the door, we can also tie a pretty strong causation that they're going to be the ones that we're talking about with the achievement gap. They're the ones that we're going to be talking about in juvenile detention centers. They're the ones that we're going to be talking about in the workforce later on. That's the children I'm trying to reach. And I'm very clear about that. And I know what I'm asking. And I'd like to get to those children first through this program. I'd like to get to them in the cleanest possible way we can. The reality is the resources that we have as a state are limited. And we're going to have tensions among programs. We're going to have tensions among providers who are trying to take care of themselves as a provider or take care of their bottom line. And I understand all that. But at the end of the day, when I put my head in the pillow, I want to make sure that those kids were the first and foremost thing that I thought about and the last thing that I thought about when I went to bed. That's what this program is about. And you're right, it's not rural, it's not metro, because you can be neglected, you can be abused, and you can be disadvantaged anywhere in our state. And if our dollars aren't finding you, other programs and other things will. And sometimes they're not the things that we want. Sometimes they're the gangs, sometimes they're the drugs, sometimes they're the alcohol. And many times it's not the education, which is what we want to find them. That's the intention of my program. That's the intention of trying to make this a pure Pathway 1 program. That's the intention of trying to drive this directly to those kids, no matter what the formidable obstacles that are in front of us. I realize that we're trying to sometimes expand that sphere and reach other children, and I know that, and let's try to do that. But I'm telling you in this program, let's first drive as straight of an arrow as we can right into the hearts of those disadvantaged communities and try to get them out. Because if we can do that now, we can start to find other solutions and other ROI. Art Rolnick talks about this incessantly. The reason the ROI is so great for these disadvantaged kids is because they have so far to come. They're so far down to the bottom. That's why the ROI is so good. We're not talking about bringing the middle up. We're talking about bringing the bottom just to up a quarter percentile. He talks about three things. The program has to focus on at-risk children. We have to focus on those kids. And the program has to have a long-term commitment. The reason there's a fade out is because we get them up to about second or third grade, and then we say, whew, we did a great job, and we let them go. We can't. And the third thing we have to do is we have to try to get some type of parental involvement. We have to get those parents in to care, and they have to be part of that transportation. They have to be part of that commitment. They have to just sit down sometimes and read a Dr. Seuss book over and over and over and over until you're ad nauseum with those words, like I have done with my kids and we have all done. But it's the simple things. And that's what I'm trying to do with this program. I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but I'm certainly trying to focus it so that we can hit some of these kids that really need it the most. So thank you, Representative Muller. We spent a lot of time on committee, and I just can't stress enough when that knock on the door arrives because somebody has an allegation on a kid, how much that affects that kid's life.
Right. So members, we're going to go to testifiers next, and then we'll come back. I've got a couple of you on the list for questions, but I want to make sure we hear from testifiers before we run out of time today. So whoever wants to go first.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Jane Payton, and I'm the Head Start Director of Three Rivers Community Action. And I'm here today to testify to oppose any bill that would eliminate Pathway 2 scholarship funding. But more importantly, I'm here on behalf of the children and families that actually choose Head Start. Head Start is a choice by families, and by choosing Head Start, they are actually choosing a 4-star parent-aware program, and they're also choosing a program that has Pathway 2 scholarship funding. So the main point I want to make about the scholarship Pathway 2 is that it's very innovative and very flexible. We know our families, and we know how to design the programs to tailor to what our family needs. So if I know a family, families would benefit more from home visiting because I come from a more rural counties, then we can take the Pathway 2 funds and I can create a home visiting program. Or maybe our families need more center-based care. Well, then I can take the Pathway funds and I can create a more center-based program. Maybe they have transportation issues. I can provide busing for them. This is all because the funds come directly to my program, not just the individual family. So I can really tailor these programs to what I need. My Pathway funding is going to look different than CARPA W in St. Paul or PICA in Minneapolis. Different kids, different families, different areas. But Pathway 1 is just giving it to that single family, so there's not the innovation that we can have with Pathway 2. Also, as long as I have been a Head Start director, I have not had one single family come to me with a Pathway 1 scholarship. Not one. So I don't know where they are. The thing is, when I create programming with Pathway 2, I go out and I recruit families. And I say, look, we have this great program we're doing. Do you want to apply? Then they apply. It's still their choice on whether they want to apply or not. But I'm going out and I'm finding those kids that are most in need. I'm not waiting for them to come to me. I just really would reconsider eliminating Pathway 2 just because of the innovation that it allows. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Wendy Webster, Madam Chair, representatives on this committee. I thank you for the opportunity to talk about House File 1220. I am the Director of Community Education in St. Anthony New Brighton School District, the smallest geographic school district here in the state. We're a 2.6 square mile school district located between Minneapolis, New Brighton, Columbia Heights, and Roseville. And I would like to talk on behalf of the Minnesota Community Education Association and also our 3- and 4-year-old learners, not only in St. Anthony Brighton School District, but throughout our state. And one of the things that, to respond to Representative Kresha's testimony as well, I'm also a parent of 2 adopted sons. We adopted our sons they were removed from their birth family at the ages of 3.5 and 5 years of age. They're placed with a foster family, and they're placed with my husband and I at the age of 5 and 6. I understand trauma. I'm living it. I'm parenting 2 children who were raised in trauma. And I'm also proud to say they're Head Start graduates. Their Head Start program in Detroit Lakes was a life-saving measure for them, I believe. So one of the things I want to, before I jump to House File 1220, I want to respond to Representative Kresha's suggestion about the fund transfers between school readiness and ECFE. Specifically, I want to help identify and explain the differences between school readiness funding and ECFE funding. And I can give you some examples from our small district in St. Anthony. We receive $14,000 in school readiness aid in St. Anthony. And we also receive some ECFE funding, a combination of state aid and local levy, which totals about $40,000. How we've, ECFE, the first and foremost focus of ECFE is parent education. We believe in ECFE that our role is to help parents see that they are a child's first and most important teacher. And so we are able to help parents develop the skills because unfortunately our kids don't come with rule books. They don't come with a playbook. And so we help parents develop the skills necessary to raise children in our world today. In St. Anthony, one of the innovative things we've chosen to do with our ECFE funding is our ECFE teachers go out to our apartment communities. We have partnerships with 3 of our local apartment communities. What we know is that a high proportion of our families of color live in our apartment communities in St. Anthony. What we also knew is that we were not seeing those families in our ECFE classes on site. So we brought the program to them. So once a week, we provide free on-site ECFE programs. What that allows us to do, it allows us to create relationships with families on site in their communities. And through those relationships, we're able to help meet the needs of those families and then talk about what the next step is in that parenting journey, in their child's educational journey. We're able to meet families when children are 0, 1, and 2 and talk about what preschool could look like. One of the things we're also proud about, ECFE just celebrated 40 years here in Minnesota. And it's unique to Minnesota. No other state has ECFE, only Minnesota. So I want to both thank you to your commitment to early learning and ECFE. Last legislative session, as you know, we have more work to do. But one of the things that I'm very proud of throughout the state, Pathway 2 scholarships have allowed increased participation in high-quality, 4-star, school-based early childhood programs. However, a singular Pathway 1 scholarship track is not an efficient nor an effective way to provide access to high-quality, school-based early childhood programs. Elimination of Pathway 2 scholarships without significant increases to school readiness funding would greatly impact and reduce the number of families who have access to high-quality
4-star school-based early childhood programs, 4-star Head Start programs. Parents are choosing school-based programs and qualify for Pathway 2 scholarships. Pathway 2 scholarships allow school districts the flexibility to meet various needs of families in their communities. School districts are currently planning for their 15-16 early childhood programs. We're submitting proposed budgets to school boards, and tomorrow our Pathway 2 applications are due to the Minnesota Department of Education, detailing how exactly we will spend those dollars and how they will be tied to a specific student. Pathway 2 scholarships also allow school districts the flexibility to expand or enhance early childhood programs based on the needs of our families. One example of program expansion and enhancement is increasing the percentage of children with high needs in programs and increasing the number of staff in the classroom to support the children. And I absolutely agree. The children that Representative Kresha talked about are the children that we've developed relationships with families and we want in our programs, but we also know that children that come from high-risk situations often need more support in the classroom. Pathway $2 allow us to provide that additional support to help those children be successful. For example, in St. Anthony, we have a child who qualified for and receives a Pathway 2 scholarship, whose parents came to our program in the fall and reported he'd been kicked out of 2 other early childhood programs. The children's parents are both immigrants. He's learning both of their home languages at home and at school. He has twin siblings that were born prematurely, so his mother was at the hospital for a couple months and out of his life. So with Pathway 2 scholarship dollars, we are able to hire a staff member to directly assist this child with transitions in the classroom. He remains in our program and is experiencing success in our early childhood classroom. A second example of program enhancement is to stabilize a family's ability to pay tuition in order to support consistent attendance. We also have another child in St. Anthony who qualified for and receives a Pathway 2 scholarship whose parents came to our program in the fall. The father has been caring for his daughter, and he's living with ALS. The deterioration of his health does not allow him to care for his child, while the mother, his wife, works full-time. They needed a full-time early childhood program for their daughter. They'd applied for a Pathway 1 scholarship. They were on the child care waiting list, and they had limited income to pay for a program. With the Pathway 2 scholarship dollars, I could sit down, we could walk through the application, and we were able to use that funding to meet their needs as a family and enroll their daughter in a full-day program. For my colleagues in the Wilmer School District, Pathway 2 scholarships have been a great asset for families. Family liaisons work with eligible families to help them choose a quality school-based program that meets their needs. They provide transportation and work with family schedules. Without the assistance of Wilmer's family liaisons, I do not believe many of the families served would be able to navigate the barriers to accessing a Pathway 1 scholarship. Even more, families would not be able to afford programming without scholarship assistance that Pathway 2 resources provide. As I said, the elimination of Pathway 2 scholarships without significant increases to school readiness funding would reduce the number of families who have access to high-quality 4-star school-based early childhood programs. Thank you for your time and to your commitment to our youngest learners in Minnesota.
Thank you. All right, so I've got a list now of additional questions. But first I want to ask, are there any other providers or folks in the early childhood community who still want to testify before we resume questions? All right, so Representative Seltzer, thank you for your patience.
Oh, no, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Kresha, for bringing this forward. And it is wonderful to be here and to have all my colleagues here. And this was a dream for many years, as back when I was a parent advocate and we were advocating for funding for our early our youngest learners, so this is a great thing. You know, the testifier from St. Anthony did such a great job that I kind of had a list of points I was going to make, but I will not repeat them. But I do just want to reiterate her point, Representative Kresha, and that is that we need to have a big enough tent for all of these fabulous ways that we can assist our youngest learners at risk. And that includes, you know, the Miss Bartons of the world. She obviously does a great job. You know, the Head Start testifier, it's amazing. And our school districts, too, many of them have waiting lists. And you did ask for input. You know, I'm a suburban legislator, and I can tell you that at least 2 out of the 3 school districts I represent are starting, or have, not starting, they have programs for students at risk. I know one school district is just simply funding that out of its fund balance because it's tired of waiting for the state to catch up. and provides wraparound services that our testifier from St. Anthony talked about. You've got the nurse, the school nurse there, you've got the principal, you've got administrators, other professionals to reach out and make sure that those needy kids are receiving the services, and their families are receiving the services they need to get on the path to success. So I voted for the early learning scholarships, in the last legislative session, and was proud to do it. But this is not the time. We need all hands on deck. So this is not the time to structure the system, Representative Kresha. So we're excluding some of these wonderful forms of early childhood education.
Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Kresha, I think we all share your passion and appreciate your passion for responding to the needs of those kids who are most at risk and where ultimately the greatest, as you point out, the greatest opportunity or return on investment, to get wonky and technical, is. I'm just not convinced that the contradictions inside your bill help us get there, because you talk about driving an arrow straight at those most at-risk kids, which is a really bad way to put it now that I think about how I
It sounded
just
great at the time.
paraphrased you. My apologies. At their needs, at something like that. But when we look at the most challenged families, drug abuse, as you pointed out, mental illness, just the grinding effects of intergenerational poverty, I don't think that eliminating Pathway to scholarships actually meets the needs of those families. And I think that when it started, the folks who administer the program started with a 9-page application. Now imagine struggling with the responsibilities of being a parent and the challenges of mental illness and the challenges of being deeply in poverty, and now in order to take care of your kid, you need to fill out a 9-page application. They've managed to get it down to a 5-page application, which still strikes me as overly burdensome. I guess, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but the woman from the Head Start agency.
Jane Payton.
Ms. Payton.
Ms. Payton, we get formal, sorry. How long is the application for your Head Start agency?
Just Head Start or the Pathway too?
Your agency, just your agency.
Okay, well,
Ms.
yeah,
Payton.
I have a separate application for just agency, and it's 1, 2, 3 pages, front and back. And what we do is we have a parent interview, and when they fill it out, we have to fill it out with them. It would be very hard to navigate on their own, just because the language is a lot of times about what their ability is to read, especially with our dual language learners and families, which, as you know, Head Start is quite a few dual language learners, so they need help.
And
Representative Dabney.
Madam
And
Chair,
the same with the Pathway 2, because then we have a Pathway 2 application. Well, we have to sit down with them, and we actually go through it with them, and we can translate it, and we can help them fill it out. If it's just going to the family, like you said, I imagine it just gets put over here. It's very hard to do on your own.
Representative Dabney.
Madam Chair, Ms. Payton, that the Pathway to Scholarship application is not available in other languages than English?
Online?
Yeah.
Payton.
No. No, we print them up, and then we bring them to the families. Pathway 1.
That,
Pathway 1, I believe, is online. I'm not sure if it's in different languages, though.
that, Madam Chair, that strikes me, given the demographics of the population we're discussing, which I think everybody up here has admitted is going to be significantly involved with the immigrant population, to not have those applications available in languages other than English strikes me as a significant absence. For the woman from New Brighton, how long is your application?
Ms. Webster.
To attend an early childhood program, typically if it's a 1-page application to attend. If they would like a school readiness scholarship, it would be approximately, it's also a 1-page application, which is also the free and reduced application for the school district. So it's the same application that parents may have worked with their older children.
Representative Dabney.
So, Madam Chair, there's There's also some issues here then around efficiency. A one-page application that doubles as the application for free and reduced lunch is a whole lot simpler than a 5-page application for a Pathway to Scholarship that may not be available in a language that you competently read and write. So I think, I mean, if we're intent about meeting the needs of these kids, and I have no question, Representative Kresha, that is your intent, I think if we want the maximum return on investment, and if we want to support the most efficient programming, which we all benefit from because it makes the dollar go a little bit further, eliminating the Pathway to just doesn't get us there. And in fact, I know, I've been at this, and the advocates don't like hearing it, but there's 600 families in Minneapolis who've chosen the Minneapolis Public Schools early childhood program. It's a program that is disproportionately, compared to the rest of the district, disproportionately low income, disproportionately immigrant. And the results are disproportionately ready for kindergarten compared to any of their peers. And yet there's 600 kids still sitting on a waiting list. Families who have chosen that program. So if we talk about parental choice, they chose this program because the results are outstanding. And they're now going to get cut off? I don't think that responds either to parental choice or to return on investment. I would urge you to, look again at continuing the Pathway to program and making it, for instance, the application process more like St. Anthony, where it's a one-page application, not a 5-page. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Dabney. I wonder if Ms. Barton or Ms. Mullane, could you explain the process for getting into your program through Pathway 1? What's it like for a family?
We have a director for our early child development program and an assistant director. When families come into the center, we meet with them. They have a tour of our early child development classrooms. Our application, I believe, is about 6 pages. It's extensive. Not only are we getting information about the family, social, economic, we're also getting information about the child, learning about the child's interest, experiences that the child or family has had, so that we can customize and focus on that child doing well and meeting the 5 domains of early child development.
And has that been daunting to those families coming through the Pathway 1?
Ms. Mullane.
Again, I think our director needs to be here because she can specifically answer that. I think our families are, just grateful that the state of Minnesota is supporting early child development. And perhaps the application might be long, but I think our families, again, just appreciate that they're getting some type of assistance because the cost of early child development is high, and we need to have that support for our children and our families.
And thank you for that.
Kresha.
And thank you. So the reason I brought it up, and Representative Dabney, we're absolutely right. The process may be daunting, but it's the Department of Education that set the Pathway 2 process up. If they're willing to make this easier, and I would work with them, because they're the ones that are ultimately responsible. They set the process up. If we remember back to last session when we were trying to do this, they clouded this. Not the scholarship, not the Pathway 2 versus the Pathway 1. The Department of Education clouded this process. I would invite them to work on us to clean this up, and we can do that. I don't believe it's necessarily the vehicles. I mean, I don't believe the challenges we have here is Pathway 1 versus Pathway 2. It's the lack of resources, and I absolutely recognize that. And I'm on the Head Start bill. I have a proposed language to talk about early learning and school readiness dollars. We have to bring the water up for all of those. And you're absolutely right. You have families that have chosen the Minneapolis, and they've chose that. and we don't have room for them, and we don't have the funds for them yet. I would love to try to get there, and I'm trying to. I can only chisel away at the ice so much, but eventually when I chisel away enough, my sculpture will look pretty good, and I hope you'll join me in enjoying that.
All right, Representative Murphy, and I'm going to let you ask the last questions for today. We will, go until 2:30, and I apologize, Representative Kresha, you've got one other bill on the calendar, which we won't get to until tomorrow, and Representative Christensen, you're in the same boat. So, but good discussion today, so we appreciate that. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Webster, you just struck, with some of your comments just struck me like the pathway to, the students are in small classrooms, aren't they?
Correct.
With
Correct.
20 kids or less than 20 kids?
Ms. Webster.
Madam Chair, that's correct. 20 kids or fewer.
And in your remarks, you talked about children being kicked out of their school and coming to you?
That's correct.
Ms. Webster.
How, these are children under 5.
That's correct.
And it's early childhood.
Yes.
Webster.
Can you describe the one or two situations of these little children being kicked out of their school and coming to you?
Madam Chair,
And what
Representative
you
Murphy's
do.
scaring me right now.
I just,
Ms. Webster.
Madam Chair, Representative Murphy, absolutely. The child that I was referring to, and I'm sure Ms. Payton has stories as well, oftentimes when children start our early childhood programs, our preschool programs at age 3, oftentimes it's their first opportunity to be in a group experience. They've had limited previous experiences, and oftentimes because of trauma in their previous life experience, it is very difficult for them. Physiologically, they're a 3-year-old. Emotionally, developmentally, they may be on a 1 or 2-year-old. So sometimes behaviors you see biting, pushing, because they're learning to use their words in the classroom. And we understand that as typical developing process of children. Unfortunately for this family, their experience, and it was an immigrant family who was struggling with their child. They were embarrassed by the behaviors, and we were very confident with them in that we can help your child. He will be successful in our program, and we've been able to provide some support for him, and he's transitioned to our program and has done quite well indeed.
Representative Murphy.
so it's not a usual and common experience for you to get children that have been kicked out of a previous experience.
Ms. Webster.
Madam Chair, Representative Murphy, depending on the site, I think some early childhood programs are more tolerant of a variety of behaviors and know that and are confident that they can help that child develop the skills they need to transition into a program. Unfortunately, I think it's more common than we wish to admit. I know that we've certainly encountered a number of families. I'm in my 7th year in St. Anthony, and we've encountered probably a couple dozen families that have came to us because they've been kicked out of other early childhood programs.
Madam Chair,
Murphy.
Ms. Webster, one more question on those forms that the parents fill out then for their child in the program. Do you ask the question if they've been kicked out of a previous experience?
Ms. Webster.
Madam Chair, Representative, we do not.
So you get them cold,
Correct.
so to speak, and then work your magic.
Exactly.
Holy cow.
All right, other questions from committee members? I just had one question, and I guess any of the providers could offer. So, and I understand obviously the difference between Pathway 1 and Pathway 2, but it sounds like from some of the testimony that you all help parents with the applications regardless of Pathway 1 or Pathway 2. Is that correct? Or, Ms. Payton, it sounded like you go out and seek parents or families that may need the services of the Head Start program that you operate for Pathway 2, but not necessarily for Pathway 1. Is there a particular reason why? Is it just that you know you have the dollars to accommodate them with the Pathway 2? Or, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so why don't you tell me? Thank you.
Madam Chair. Yeah, depending upon how you use the Scholarship 2 funds and how you develop your program. So I use them to extend my school year. So I run a summer program. So what we do is we go out and recruit families for a summer program that would qualify for Pathway 2. I've never had a Pathway 1 family come to me. I mean, they must fill it out and then they must get the scholarship, but I'm not sure they know what to do with it or where to find these 4-star rated programs. Head Start automatically is, so we automatically, if we apply for the Scholarship 2 grant, we get that, and then, like I said, we can choose how we want to use that, whether it's hiring more teachers to make a smaller class size, extending it into a summer program. Maybe I can't afford transportation. Now I can afford transportation, and I can actually bus more kids to my program. So it really allows for flexibility, and I think you are definitely reaching more kids that way.
And so the students, if you expanded for a summer program, would that be for students currently in your program, maybe during the school year, and then you're allowing them to have the opportunity to have your services in the summer as well?
Madam Chair, yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Either of the other two of you want to comment on that?
Well, we don't have staff capacity to go out and enroll parents, but we haven't had a problem with parents coming in to enroll their children. If we had more capacity, we could enroll more children than we currently have.
Thank you. All right, Representative Kresha, any final comments, very briefly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just all I want to say to my fellow legislators in the room is we're the ones lobbying for these kids. That's all they have. And so I thank you for the discussion, and I thank you for everything you've offered to help with the bill.
All right. And so with that, Representative Kresha renews his motion that House Bill 1220 be re-referred to Ways and Means, but I am laying it over today. And thank you, the committee, for their questions and their participation today. We are adjourned.